Hi, I'm Dr. Tom Lewis, founder of Real Health Clinics. I'm a medical scientist with degrees from the Harvard School of Public Health and MIT. Real Health Clinics is all about finding solutions and delivering solutions to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, and dementia, as well as other neurodegenerative diseases like glaucoma. So we talked in the last two presentations about how Alzheimer's is actually a vascular disease on the same continuum with heart disease, stroke, microinfarcts, and vascular dementia. So today I really want to get into the causes of small vessel disease. That's the commonality, the common root cause between heart diseases and Alzheimer's. So let's dig into the weeds here. So we've already said that heart disease is a disease of the small vessels that support the large vessels, and Alzheimer's is a disease of the small vessels, the capillaries of the brain. So let's look at some research out there published in the New England Journal of Medicine, the top medical journal in the world from Harvard Medical School, talking about cardiac dysfunction. Could this cardiac dysfunction be actually the exact same mechanism that's going on in Alzheimer's? So they're positing that really heart disease and cardiac dysfunction is actually Alzheimer's disease of the heart. So let's explore that from a broader search of the literature. So if you do a simple thing in Google Scholar, which basically queries PubMed, and look at Alzheimer's and inflammation, and inflammation is really now understood to be at the root of heart disease, we see 289,000 hits that link inflammation and Alzheimer's disease. So heart disease and inflammation, almost 3 million hits. So, and here's just an example of a paper. Inflammation, obesity, stress, and coronary heart disease. Is interleukin-6 a link? That's an inflammatory marker. So we're seeing that inflammation is highly connected to Alzheimer's disease, and inflammation is highly connected to cardiovascular diseases. But I have one thing to say. There's a commonality, inflammation, but stop blaming inflammation for our conditions. Treat inflammation for what it is, a treasure of nature. Inflammation is simply a measure of how activated our immune system is, looking to help us and protect us from disease. So what is that disease that inflammation is there to protect us from? Generally toxicity, but infection is also intimately connected to inflammation. So here's a simple search. Here's a disease state, like cardiovascular disease. Here's a search on cardiovascular disease and inflammation. And here's a search on cardiovascular disease and infection. And if you look down the list, there's almost a one-to-one correspondence in the medical research between any disease state, including Alzheimer's, inflammation, and infection. The only exception is ulcers, which is now known to be tied to H. pylori bacteria and infection, so there's more hits on infection. But otherwise, it's a pretty clear message. All these chronic conditions, including cancer, cardiovascular disease, and Alzheimer's, are tied to inflammation and tied to infection. So here's some research from Dr. McCulley at Harvard. Chlamydia pneumoniae is an infection. It's an infection that gets inside cells. It's not outside the cell. It's inside the cell. It's found in vascular plaques. And in fact, when you go deeper, researchers in Germany found 50 different infectious species and diseases of vascular tissue. So heart disease, we're finding infection in the tissue itself. And they're finding no infection in healthy tissue. So people with vascular conditions, like who've had a heart attack, when you dig deep enough, you're finding infection associated with the plaques that are tied to that heart event. So here's Alzheimer's and chlamydia pneumoniae, identification and localization of chlamydia pneumoniae infection in Alzheimer's disease. We're seeing 7,000 hits. There are 7,000 research papers on this connection, but no one's evaluating this in the clinic with people with Alzheimer's disease. Heart disease and chlamydia pneumonia, 38,000. There's again your link. Next slide. So Dr. Tremp, my colleague at Harvard, and myself have written a book on Alzheimer's that's been out long enough that academic press picked it up and published it. It's called The End of Alzheimer's, coincidentally, the brain and beyond. And so in that book, we go into great detail about this inflammatory, infectious, capillary, vascular connection between Alzheimer's disease and heart disease. So in summary, Alzheimer's disease is a vascular disease. Heart disease, the small vessels are the large vessels. That's where the disease emanates from. Alzheimer's, capillaries of the brain. Both diseases involve inflammation. Infection is connected to inflammation in almost all chronic disease states, if not all. Chlamydia pneumoniae and spirochetes, like the Lyme bacterium, are common in both these diseases, and it goes much beyond these infectious species. But if you don't look for these types of things, then you don't have a solution for these conditions. My name is Dr. Tom Lewis, founder of Real Health Clinics. Thank you for your time.